What happens when a grieving woman slips a truth serum tablet into the coffee of the world's most feared billionaire, only to be caught mid-scheme and forced into his deadly world instead? Can Ava Sinclair, desperate to uncover her sister's secret death, outwit Gabriel Steele, a man whose empire runs on power and silence? Or will their uneasy alliance against a ruthless enemy pull her deeper into danger, betrayal, and temptation than she ever imagined? When revenge turns to survival and secrets cut both ways, who will drink the last sip? And who will pay the ultimate price for truth? Hooked on this thriller? There's so much more waiting. Hit like and subscribe, and ring the bell to dive deeper into dark conspiracies, jaw-dropping betrayals, and endings you'll never see coming. Stay with us and don't miss a single twist. The city was still half asleep when Gabriel Steele entered his private kitchen. Silent, sharp-suited, and terrifyingly calm. Mornings were sacred to him. One black coffee before he unleashed himself on the world. Everything in his life ran on precision. Nothing escaped his eyes, especially not today. Across the marble counter, Ava Sinclair worked with careful hands. She'd only been in his penthouse for 3 weeks, one of the many maids rotated through by the household staff agency. Quiet, polite, invisible, until now. Gabriel's instincts had been warning him for days. She looked too alert, too deliberate for someone just wiping counters. He stood at the far end of the kitchen, appearing to scroll through his phone. But his gaze was fixed on her every move. Ava's breath caught as she reached for the silver tin where sugar usually sat. Her fingers hesitated just long enough for suspicion to harden in Gabriel's chest. A pause. A small, almost imperceptible glance over her shoulder to check if he was watching. He was. Slowly, she slipped something from her apron, a tiny white tablet, and let it fall into the steaming coffee. It dissolved with barely a ripple. Gabriel's jaw flexed once. No raised voice, no sudden movement, just quiet calculation. He approached the counter, silent, predatory, until he stood across from her. Ava's shoulders went rigid, but she didn't turn. "You seem nervous," Gabriel said softly. Ava nearly dropped the spoon. "Nervous? No, sir. Just new." His gaze shifted to the coffee cup, then back to her wide eyes. His hand closed around the porcelain mug, lifted it just high enough for her to believe he might drink. Then, with a smooth, deliberate motion, he extended it toward her. "Drink it," he said. 2 words, icy, commanding. Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. "Sir?" Her voice cracked like glass. "Drink," Gabriel repeated, tone calm but final, like a verdict. Every instinct told her to run, but her feet stayed rooted. She'd planned for everything, except this. He was supposed to drink, to talk, to reveal pieces of a dark truth she was desperate to find. Not... This Ava swallowed hard, trying to think. Lying would be useless. Men like Gabriel lived on lies and had built empires on spotting them. I can't," she whispered, voice trembling. His eyes narrowed a fraction. Not anger, curiosity. "Why not?" Her throat worked. "It's just too hot." "Then wait," he said simply, setting the mug down between them, unblinking. "We have time." The air grew heavier with each passing second. Ava's mind raced. She thought of her sister. Bright, brilliant Ellie, whose name she'd sworn never to speak in this house. Ellie was gone now, her death stamped with corporate indifference and buried beneath non-disclosure agreements. And the man standing across from her? The world whispered he was responsible. She had come here for answers, for revenge, if necessary. But now, the hunter felt like prey. Gabriel's eyes studied her face, the flicker of panic, the desperate calculation. He knew this dance. Boardrooms were full of sharks who'd tried to outwit him. None had succeeded. "Tell me," he said softly. leaning in just enough for his voice to sink under her skin. "What's in my coffee?" Ava froze. He tilted his head, almost amused. "You think I don't notice everything in my house?" She stammered, then stopped. Her palms slicked with sweat. "I'll ask once more," Gabriel said, his voice like smooth steel. "What is in my coffee?" Ava's breath trembled. If she lied and he found out, she was finished. Maybe worse. But if she told the truth, she risked everything she came here for. It's not poison," she blurted, shaking her head violently. "It wouldn't hurt you." Gabriel's brow lifted just slightly. "Reassuring. It's something to help me," she said, words spilling now, adrenaline overriding fear. "It's a serum. It loosens tongues. You wouldn't have felt it. Just talked more. Told me things." "Things," he echoed, expression unreadable. "About what?" "My sister," Ava whispered before she could stop herself. Something flickered in Gabriel's gaze. Gone in an instant. But there. A tell. He leaned back slightly, folding his arms. "And what do you imagine I know about your sister?" Ava's chest heaved. She'd said too much, but something about his tone made her feel, strangely, less hunted. She worked for Steele Industries. Then she didn't. Then she died. No explanation. No answers. Just silence. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Gabriel exhaled. Slow. Deliberate. "You walk into my home, drug my coffee, and demand the truth." "I didn't demand." "Yes, you did." His eyes hardened again, the momentary crack sealed. "But you're either very brave or very foolish." Ava's voice broke. "I just want to know what happened to her." Gabriel studied her for a long, unreadable moment. The predator evaluating whether to kill or keep. Then, shockingly, a low, amused sound left his chest. Half a chuckle, dry and dangerous. "You've got nerve, Sinclair," he said at last. "I'll give you that." She blinked, confused. "But if you want answers," Gabriel continued, picking up the mug and pouring its contents into the sink, "drugging me isn't the way." He stepped closer, so close she could smell the faint spice of his cologne and the quiet threat of his presence. "From now on," he murmured, "you work for me." "Really work for me? You want the truth? Earn it!" Ava's breath hitched. "Work for you?" He didn't repeat himself, just turned and walked away, leaving her trembling in the wake of something she couldn't yet name. Fear, hope, danger. Maybe all three. The first battle was over. The war was just beginning. Ava Sinclair sat frozen in the quiet kitchen long after Gabriel Steele disappeared down the hallway. Her hands trembled so hard she could barely set the empty coffee cup back on the counter. She had failed. No, worse than failed. She'd been caught. And instead of firing her or calling the police, the man had given her something stranger, heavier. An order. "Work for me." The words stalked her as she cleaned the pristine counters, as she tried to breathe normally again. What could he possibly want from her? And why hadn't he thrown her out? By the time Gabriel returned, freshly changed into his armor of a charcoal suit, Ava had nearly convinced herself she'd imagined the offer. But then he stepped into the room, tie loose, sleeves rolled to his forearms, and the air changed again. Controlled. Predatory. "Sit." He gestured to the stool by the counter. Ava obeyed, pulse pounding. He poured himself a new coffee, from a fresh carafe this time, and leaned against the counter opposite her. No mug for her, just his eyes, sharp and dark as obsidian. "So," Gabriel began casually. "Truth serum." She flinched at the words. Don't lie." He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "It was clever, I'll grant you that. But explain," her fingers twisted in her lap. "I needed answers. About?" "My sister." "Ellie Sinclair." He said the name like it belonged to him already. Junior researcher, 2 years at Steele Biotech Division. Dead in a car crash. He took a sip of coffee. That sister? The room tilted. Ava's breath caught. You know her? I know everyone who's ever worked for me, Gabriel said. The question is, what do you think I did? Ava's chest burned with anger and grief. She was healthy, happy, brilliant. Then she started acting scared. She called me the night before she died. Said she'd found something at work. Something wrong. And the next morning, she was gone. Just like that. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. No answers. No investigation. Just an NDA and a check shoved at my parents. Your company shut it all down. Gabriel's expression didn't shift, but the stillness around him sharpened. And so you came here. As a maid? It was the only way in, Ava whispered. You're impossible to reach. But coffee? Coffee you drink every day. One dark brow arched. And you thought dosing me would give you what? A confession? I thought you might let something slip. Gabriel chuckled once. Quiet. Humorless. You think I've built an empire by slipping secrets over breakfast? I think you have things you don't want found, Ava said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. That earned a flicker of respect in his gaze. Brave, he murmured. Desperate, she corrected. He studied her in silence long enough to make her squirm, then set down his cup and crossed the distance between them. Slowly, deliberately, until he was close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the cool assessment in his eyes. I don't tolerate trespassers, Gabriel said softly. But I admire ingenuity. You risked your life to come at me. Why? Ava swallowed hard. Because no one else will tell the truth. His gaze was unreadable. Then, with a small sigh, he stepped back. You're either an extraordinary liar, he said, or the most reckless woman I've met in years. I'm not lying, Ava whispered. I know. He turned, leaning on the counter again. You want answers about Ellie? Fine, but you don't break into my life and get them for free. You'll work for me. What does that mean? Ava asked warily. It means, Gabriel said, eyes slicing back to hers, you stop pretending to dust furniture. You help me in places where someone clever and unnoticed can see what others can't. You want the truth? Start earning it. Ava hesitated. Why help me? If your company killed her, my company, Gabriel said, voice edged with something sharp, is not me. Don't confuse the two. The distinction hung between them, heavy and curious. You don't believe me, Ava said. I don't trust anyone, Gabriel replied coolly. But I trust patterns. And someone wanted Ellie gone. That much I know. A chill ran up Ava's spine. Then we have a common enemy, Gabriel said quietly. And common enemies make strange allies. Ava's breath caught. Allies? He gave the faintest of smiles, more a baring of teeth than warmth. Temporary. Silence stretched again, filled with the hum of the city far below and the low hiss of the espresso machine still cooling. Ava's mind whirled. This was not what she planned. She'd come for revenge, for proof. Not a partnership with the man she blamed. But she saw something new in Gabriel's eyes now. Something she hadn't expected. Interest. Not attraction, not yet, but calculation sharpened with a spark of curiosity. As if she were a puzzle he'd decided to solve. What if I say no? Ava asked finally. Gabriel picked up his coffee again, slow and deliberate. Then you leave here tonight with nothing, and you'll never get close to the truth again. He let the threat hang. Ava's hands clenched in her lap. Leaving meant safety, but it also meant going back to the same empty grief and silence. Staying meant risk, but maybe, finally, answers. She looked up at him. Fine. His smile deepened just slightly, satisfaction glinting in his gaze. Good girl. The phrase hit her like a spark. Infuriating, humiliating, but also strangely grounding. She forced herself not to flinch. First lesson, Gabriel said smoothly. Never bring a weapon you're unwilling to use. Second lesson, if you're going to hunt monsters, you'd better have teeth. A shiver ran down her spine. He downed the last of his coffee and set the cup aside. Your shift starts now. And just like that, the hunter and prey lines blurred, replaced by something more dangerous. Partnership, forged in secrets and risk. The elevator ride down from Gabriel Steele's penthouse felt like a descent into another world. Ava's palms stayed damp inside her coat pockets, her mind whirring as the city lights stretched below. She hadn't said yes yet, not formally, but somehow the trap had already closed. Gabriel hadn't pressed. He never did. He simply gave her an access badge that morning, cool metal sliding across the counter toward her. You'll come to the tower tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. A statement, not a question. And now here she was. The steel industry's headquarters loomed like a blade against the skyline. Glass and black steel twisting upward into low cloud. Inside, the air smelled faintly of ozone and expensive polish. Security was everywhere. Guards in discreet suits, facial scanners blinking green. Her borrowed badge trembled between her fingers as she scanned through each checkpoint. Keep walking, Gabriel murmured beside her as they moved through the first security gate. His presence swallowed the space, tall, tailored, dark-eyed, and unreadable. Executives and assistants melted out of his way like water parting for a ship's hull. Ava swallowed, whispering under her breath, I shouldn't be here. Correct, Gabriel said dryly without looking at her. But you are. They passed through an executive-only elevator. As the doors shut, sealing them alone, she felt her heartbeat trip over itself. What do you really want from me? She asked. He glanced at her, a flicker of interest, maybe amusement. Perspective. That's vague. So is survival. The corners of his mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. The elevator doors opened into a floor unlike anything she'd pictured. This wasn't the gleaming, open-concept world of tech billionaires she'd seen in magazines. It was hushed and clinical. Security doors with digital locks, walls of black glass hiding whatever happened inside. A place built to keep secrets buried. Gabriel led her into a small briefing room. The glass darkened behind them automatically. He leaned against the edge of the table, crossing his arms. You wanted answers, he said simply. Here's the deal. You work for me. Not cleaning, not coffee. Real work, she hesitated. Work doing what? Seeing things others overlook. His gaze sharpened. You're quick, observant, clever enough to sneak into my life. Almost. That skill is valuable. You'd hire the person who tried to drug you? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. You're dangerous in the wrong hands. Better I keep you where I can see you. A chill slid down her spine. That's comforting. It's honest. He uncrossed his arms, stepping closer. I have enemies, Sinclair. Some I know. Some I don't. You're already sniffing where you shouldn't. If someone inside my company silenced your sister, they might want you gone, too. Stay out there alone and your prey. Her throat went dry. But with me, Gabriel's voice dropped, quieter but sharper. With me, you get protection, access, a fighting chance. Ava searched his face, looking for cracks. And what do you get? His half-smile was knife-sharp. A ghost who won't stop until she finds the truth, redirected toward the right enemies. So I'm bait. So you're useful. She hated that the word didn't sting more than it did. Useful was better than powerless. And if I say no? She asked. You walk away, Gabriel said simply. But my advice? Don't. You've stirred water that doesn't stay calm. Her hands tightened into fists at her sides. Fear battled fury in her chest. She hadn't come this far to run. I want access to everything Ellie touched, Ava said, forcing steel into her voice. Ambitious. Gabriel's eyes glinted with faint amusement. But I'll give you something better. Proximity, she frowned. Proximity? To me, he said. To where the decisions happen. Watch, listen. You'll see more than files ever tell. Her stomach tightened. Being close to him felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Terrifying, but with the possibility of flight. And if I find something? She asked quietly. Then you bring it to me first, Gabriel said, his voice all command again. No heroics. No running to the press. No playing detective. Why would I trust you? You wouldn't, Gabriel said with a shrug. But you want to live long enough to get your truth. I'm the better devil. Something about the way he said it, flat, matter of fact, sent a shiver through her. The better devil. She exhaled slowly. Fine, he extended his hand. Not to shake, just an unspoken agreement. Ava looked at it, then up at him. I'm not yours, a low chuckle. Not yet, he said, but let his hand fall. Welcome to the other side. The next hours blurred. Gabriel moved like a general, silent and lethal, leading her through layers of his empire. Restricted corridors opened with a swipe of his card. Laboratories buzzed behind glass, white coats bending over luminous screens. Encrypted archives, sealed by biometrics, hummed behind vault-like doors. Ava caught words she didn't understand. Phase trials, containment breach, black channel. Everywhere, people avoided Gabriel's gaze. Executives stiffened when he passed. Assistants whispered as soon as he left. The air smelled of power and fear. At one point, he stopped abruptly in front of a wide window overlooking the city. Rule 1, he said quietly, hands clasped behind his back. No one here is innocent. Not even me, Ava swallowed. Comforting. Rule 2. He looked at her, and for the first time there was something almost human, almost weary, behind the steel. Truth has a cost. Decide now if you're willing to pay it. Her chest tightened, but she nodded. Gabriel's gaze lingered for a heartbeat, then cooled again. Good, now watch carefully. The people who killed your sister may already know you're here. Ava's breath caught, but she stood taller. Somewhere deep inside, terror twisted into resolve. She had stepped into the devil's den, but maybe, just maybe, she could survive it. Ava had learned in weeks what she couldn't in years outside Steel Industries. Working close to Gabriel was like walking a live wire. Each day a test of nerve and instinct, but she was seeing what no outsider ever had. And now, late one rain-lashed night, hunched alone over a secure terminal in a quiet research wing, she found what she had come for, her sister's name, Ava Sinclair. The file was buried under layers of encrypted directories, tucked behind meaningless codes. Ava's pulse thudded in her ears as the screen filled with clinical language she barely understood. Project Archive. Unapproved neurostimulant trials. Subject fatality due to vascular collapse. The date matched Ellie's death to the hour. Ava's hands shook. Illegal experiments. Covered up. She scanned fast, heart breaking with every sterile phrase. Ellie had been part of something dangerous, and someone had made sure no one knew. But then Ava's breath caught. Another document, deeper still, flagged with an internal note. Decision compelled by board directive. Override CEO objection logged. She stared at the line until it blurred. Gabriel had objected? It didn't make sense. The man she'd hated for weeks might have tried to stop this? She sat back, dizzy, trying to reconcile the monster she imagined with the man who'd warned her. Truth has a cost. A faint sound broke her thoughts. Footsteps, measured and heavy, echoing down the corridor. Ava's gut clenched. She shut the terminal with shaking fingers and stuffed the stolen data drive into her jacket. Too late, a tall figure stepped into the low light. Ronan Vale, Gabriel's head of security. Former intelligence, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp and merciless. Well, Ronan said quietly, gaze sweeping the terminal. You're a long way from the laundry closet. Ava's heart slammed. Mr. Steele asked me to save it. He advanced, silent and certain like a predator. You've been digging. On a secure floor, alone, past two locked doors. His voice was low but lethal. You know what we do with intruders? Ava took a step back, palms up. I work for him. You clean for him, Ronan said, lip curling. But you don't belong here, her mind raced. Where was Gabriel? He'd left hours ago, meetings across town. She'd risked coming back alone, thinking no one would check this wing tonight. Big mistake. Ronan reached for his comm device. Panic spiked. Wait! Gabriel told me to look into Ava Sinclair. That stopped him. A flicker of interest, but no softening. He told you? Ronan's voice sharpened. Why would he? The comm buzzed in his hand before he could finish. A low, distorted voice spilled from the earpiece. Ronan? Problem? Ronan's gaze locked on hers, unreadable, before he answered. Found our little ghost poking in archive. A tense pause crackled through the line. Then a new voice, smooth, unfamiliar, said, Contain and deliver. Every instinct screamed run. Ava's legs twitched to bolt. But Ronan moved like lightning, closing the distance and seizing her wrist before she could pivot. He wasn't hurting her, not yet, but the grip was steel. You've got nerve, he murmured, eerily echoing Gabriel's words from that first night. Pity it'll get you killed. A flicker of motion behind him, fast, quiet, like a shadow slipping from the dark. Gabriel. He moved soundlessly, but his presence filled the corridor like a shifting storm. Let her go. Ronan didn't flinch, but his grip loosened fractionally. She's in restricted data, boss, I said. Gabriel's voice dropped to a lethal growl. Let her go. Something silent and dangerous passed between them. After a breath, Ronan released her wrist and stepped back, expression still carved from stone. Ava staggered a step, clutching her arm. You, her voice trembled. You left. I said not to play detective alone, Gabriel snapped, anger leaking through the usually perfect control. His gaze swept her pale face, the shaking hand clutching the drive in her pocket. What did you find? She swallowed. Archive. Illegal trials. Ellie. Her voice broke, but she forced it out. Ellie died because of them. But there's a record. You tried to stop it. For once, Gabriel looked away first. Just a heartbeat. But enough. Yes, it landed like a blow. You knew, Ava whispered. I fought it, Gabriel said quietly. I lost. The world tilted. He wasn't the monster. Or maybe he was, but not in the way she thought. Worse, he'd been powerless once, too. Behind him, Ronan shifted, tension still electric. This was flagged. They know she's looking. Who? Ava asked, panic rising. Gabriel's jaw clenched. People who don't want the past opened. Board members who built their fortunes on projects like Archive. And now they know about me. Gabriel's gaze sharpened, protective and furious. Yes, the air pulsed with unsaid things. Fear, guilt, something warmer flickering in the wreckage. Dangerous. Alive. Ava looked at him and saw not just power, but edges of vulnerability he'd never shown. But there was no time to parse it. We need to move, Ronan said. If the board's hit list is awake, she's on it now. Gabriel nodded once, then looked at Ava with something she couldn't name. Stay close. Don't leave my sight. The words should have sounded like an order. They didn't. They felt like a vow. Ava wanted to argue. She hated needing him, hated trusting the man she came to destroy. But the weight of what she'd found pressed her silent. For now, Gabriel stepped past her, his presence a shield between her and the corridor's dark. But as they turned toward the elevator, Ava caught Ronan's look, part warning, part curiosity. She had made enemies, and maybe allies. Hard to tell the difference here. She gripped the drive in her pocket like a lifeline. The truth was out there now, sharp enough to cut, and someone powerful had felt the blade. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke over the city as Gabriel's motorcade cut through the rain. Ava sat rigid in the back seat of the armored SUV, staring out at neon streaking the wet glass. Beside her, Gabriel was silent. Not the cool silence of before, but the coiled, calculating kind that meant trouble. Ronan Vale drove. The security chief's broad shoulders hunched slightly as if weighed down by secrets. He'd said almost nothing since the confrontation in the lab. Ava could feel his eyes flicking to the mirror now and then, measuring her. Finally, Gabriel spoke. Talk. Ronan's jaw worked, the faintest muscle twitching. We've got chatter from internal channels. Board's panicking. They know Sinclair saw archive files. Ava stiffened. They're coming after me. They're coming after us, Gabriel corrected, voice low. They think you and I are working together. Are we? She asked before she could stop herself. A faint, humorless smile tugged at his mouth. We'll see, silence stretched. Then Ronan's voice cut it like a knife. She doesn't know, does she? Gabriel's gaze lifted, sharp. Know what? Ronan's eyes met Ava's in the rearview mirror. Ava Sinclair wasn't some innocent researcher. She was planted. Ava's breath hitched. What? Undercover, Ronan said flatly. Came in through an advocacy group trying to burn steel industries down from the inside. I only found out after she died. Someone higher used her and then cleaned house. That's a lie, Ava snapped, heart slamming against her ribs. She was a scientist. She cared. Doesn't mean she wasn't recruited, Ronan said, face unreadable. Sometimes the cause looks noble until it isn't. Ava turned to Gabriel, desperate. Tell him he's wrong, but Gabriel's expression was carved from granite. It's possible, he said quietly. The air seemed to leave the car. You knew? Ava's voice cracked. I knew there were whispers, Gabriel admitted, eyes still on hers. Ellie raised flags, but I didn't have proof. And she died before I could get it. Ava shook her head, tears stinging hot and unwanted. You're saying she was some pawn in your war? I'm saying, Gabriel said gently but firmly, the board will weaponize anything, including her memory. Don't let them destroy you with it. The words barely landed before chaos erupted. A deafening crack split the air. Bullet impact on the bulletproof glass. Another and another. The SUV jolted as Ronan swerved hard. Ambush! He barked. Down! Gabriel shoved Ava to the floor just as the rear window spiderwebbed with fractures. Shouts, the squeal of tires, metal grinding metal as another vehicle rammed them from behind. Ava's ears rang. She could taste fear like copper. Gabriel was a blur of calm violence. Gun drawn from somewhere under his jacket. Voice low and lethal. Drive, Vale. I'm trying! Ronan snarled, jerking the wheel as another round of shots pelted the car. Two tails. Black sedans. The world outside was a smear of rain and lights as Ronan dove into a side street. Another impact slammed Ava sideways. Gabriel caught her, arms steel around her shoulders. She forced words past the adrenaline choking her. They're trying to kill you. They're trying to kill us, Gabriel corrected again, tone like iron. Why aren't we shooting back? Bulletproof, not invincible, Ronan barked. We make it to the garage. We have a chance. But a sudden hard swerve threw them. The SUV fishtailed. A truck blocked the road ahead, floodlights cutting through rain. Trap! Out! Gabriel ordered. He yanked Ava toward the curbside as Ronan slammed the brakes and returned fire through a cracking window. Move, Sinclair! Cold rain slapped her face as she stumbled onto slick pavement. Gunfire rattled somewhere close. Shouts echoed off steel walls of the alley. Gabriel's hand was iron on her arm as he pulled her toward a side service door, half hidden in shadow. Inside, now. They crashed through into darkness, stairwell, echoing with water and boots. Behind them, Ronan's footsteps thundered. More gunfire, shouts closing in. This way! Gabriel pushed her up narrow stairs. Stay behind me! Ava's heart hammered so violently she could barely think. But one thought burned clear. She could run. In the chaos, she could vanish, disappear before the man who might have ruined her family pulled her deeper. But behind them a shot rang out. Too close. Gabriel staggered, just a fraction, his shoulder jerking back with the force. He was hit. He turned, gun raised one-handed now, firing two sharp, clean shots that sent their pursuers scattering. Then he looked at her, and for the first time she saw real pain break through his mask. Go, he ordered hoarsely. She froze. Go. This was her chance. Run and end this. Leave him to bleed. But Ellie's face came unbidden, laughing, alive, always telling Ava to choose better than anger. And another image, raw and uninvited. Gabriel turning back for her in the lab, shielding her from Ronan, standing against his own machine to keep her alive. Ava's fists clenched. No, she grabbed his other arm and hauled him forward. You're not dying here. Bad decision, Gabriel muttered. Half grimace, half strange, reluctant smile. Story of my life, she hissed, dragging him up the last flight. They burst into an upper-level maintenance hall. Ronan caught up, blood at his temple but alive, covering their rear. Exit to the roof, he shouted. Helicopter blades somewhere above. Gabriel winced, but kept moving with her shoulder under his. When they reached the roof door, Ava shoved it open into pelting rain and whipping wind. The helipad light cut through the storm. A Steel Industries chopper waiting, rotors shrieking. Go, Ronan yelled again, firing backward. Ava shoved Gabriel toward the helicopter crew, who swarmed him instantly, one medic pressing to his wound. He caught her wrist before they pulled him aboard. His grip was weak, but his gaze sharp, burning through the storm. You could have left, he said. I know, Ava answered. And for just a heartbeat, something unguarded passed between them. Trust, fragile but real. Then the crew dragged him in, and the chopper lifted, leaving fire and rain and sirens behind. Ava stood soaked and shaking, realizing she'd just saved the man she'd sworn to destroy, and crossed a line she could never uncross. 2 weeks after the ambush, Gabriel Steele looked nothing like the man who'd been bleeding in the rain. His left arm was still strapped in a sling beneath a flawless black suit, but the set of his jaw and the chill in his eyes told Ava he'd already turned pain into strategy. Ava had changed, too. She'd gone from housemaid to something sharper, harder. Fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer ruled her. She'd chosen to save him. Now, she lived with that choice. They met in the glass-walled war room at the top of Steel Tower, alone, but for the low thrum of servers and the rain streaking down the windows. The table between them was empty except for a single small vial, milky liquid swirling inside. Ava's breath caught the second she saw it. You kept it, she said quietly. Gabriel followed her gaze, unreadable. Your little invention? Of course. It's not mine. No, he agreed. But you used it first. Now we use it right. He turned the vial slowly between his fingers. Valen Holt, he said. Our real enemy? Old money. Predatory investor. He's been circling Steel Industries for years. Funded Archive in secret. Pushed Ellie into place. Cut her loose when she became inconvenient. The board covered for him because he owns half of them. Ava's pulse quickened with fury. He killed her. He ordered it done. Gabriel's eyes didn't flinch. And nearly finished me. They'd uncovered Holt's fingerprints everywhere in the days since the ambush. Anonymous shell companies, payoffs, hush contracts. But none of it would hold up if the board stayed under Holt's thumb. So why the serum? She asked. Gabriel's gaze sharpened. Holt built his empire on fear and contracts. But one thing still matters to him: control. He won't expect anyone to force his own truth into daylight. "You want me to dose him?" she said slowly. "I want him to destroy himself," Gabriel corrected. "We can't just shoot him. The board would turn martyrdom into takeover. We need him to confess publicly in front of his allies. That ends him and frees me to gut the rest. And you want me there? I want him off balance." A hint of dark amusement touched his mouth. "You're very good at that." Ava stared at the vial. The first time she'd held one like it, she'd been desperate and alone. Now the man she once hated offered it back like a weapon and a test. "You trust me with this?" "No," Gabriel said frankly, "but I trust that you want him to pay." Somehow that was enough. They set the trap inside the executive boardroom. Glass, chrome, and power polished to a ruthless shine. Holt arrived like a king, flanked by bodyguards, confident and smiling. He looked ordinary. Silver hair, expensive suit. But the way the other directors straightened told Ava exactly how dangerous he was. "Gabriel," Holt said warmly, false concern oozing. "Glad to see you survived your little accident." Gabriel didn't stand. He lounged at the head of the table, pale but lethal, a predator waiting. Ava stood just behind his chair, silent and watchful. "No accident," Gabriel said mildly. "Just your hired guns missing their mark." The room shifted. Nervous coughs, darting glances. Holt's smile didn't move. "Careful, son. Accusations like that are about to be proven," Gabriel cut in. He tapped a sleek decanter of brandy on the table. "Drink. It's tradition to toast before big deals." Holt's eyes flicked to the glass Gabriel poured, amused. "You first," Gabriel chuckled low. "Paranoid, Valen? I've lived too long not to be." "Fair enough." Gabriel took a deliberate sip of his own pour, untouched by anything but amber liquor, and then gestured casually to Ava. She stepped forward, sliding the second glass across to Holt. Her hands didn't tremble. "From me," she said softly. Holt's brow arched, faint surprise at her presence. "The maid," he said, dismissive. "Not anymore," Gabriel murmured. Holt laughed, long and booming, and drank to mock them. For 10 seconds, nothing changed. Then Holt's face slackened. Just a flicker, subtle enough only Gabriel and Ava caught it. "Valen," Gabriel said conversationally, leaning back. "Tell the board about Archive. Holt's voice stumbled, uncharacteristic. His eyes widened. "Archive was mine," he said, the words escaping like breath. "It was supposed to cripple Steele's hold. Use Ava Sinclair? Leverage insider intel." The room went still. Someone whispered, "God." Holt's face twisted as if he felt the betrayal of his own mouth. He tried to stop, but the serum worked clean and merciless, prying secrets free. "I ordered the crash," Holt blurted, horror dawning in his own eyes. "Tied up loose ends." The silence cracked into chaos. Shouts, gasps, board members recoiling as cameras hidden in the room streamed everything to Steele Industries' secure cloud. Lawyers grabbed phones, security moved, but it was too late. The confession was alive. Gabriel rose slowly. Every inch the predator reawakened. "Thank you, Valen," he said, voice almost gentle. "That's all I needed." Holt lunged for him, rage and panic wild, but guards swarmed. Gabriel didn't move. Ava didn't either. Her breath came hard, but her gaze stayed locked on the man who killed her sister. She thought she'd feel triumph, but it was something deeper, heavier, like justice burning and grief easing just enough to breathe. The boardroom erupted in noise, shouting, calling for removal, legal teams descending. Gabriel turned to her amid the chaos, expression unreadable, but softer than she'd ever seen. "You okay?" he asked. Ava swallowed hard. "I don't know." "You did well." "You used me," she said. But there was no venom, only exhaustion. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Truth has a cost," she met his eyes. "Worth it." Something passed between them again, fragile but fierce, forged in fire and loss. Not forgiveness, not yet, but alliance, maybe trust. Gabriel glanced at Holt, being dragged away, then back to her. "This isn't over," he said. "But it's a start." "For Ellie," she whispered. "For you," he said, almost under his breath. They stood together in the wreckage, predator and prey no more, just two survivors bound by what they'd burned to reach this far. The storm had finally broken. In the weeks since Valen Holt's public collapse, the empire of steel industries looked the same from the outside. The glass towers, the glowing name across the skyline, but inside everything had shifted. Board seats were vacant, long-buried investigations cracked open, lawyers flooded in and out like restless tide. The predator's den had been gutted. Gabriel Steele was alive, but not untouched. His left shoulder was still bound under his suit, quiet lines of pain etched deeper around his eyes. He'd spent days in closed-door battles, reclaiming control, burning contracts, cleaning house. Yet, whenever Ava caught glimpses of him in meetings or hallways, there was a different weight in him now, lighter somehow, no longer alone. She, too, had changed. No apron, no quiet invisibility. Gabriel had insisted she move out of the staff quarters into a secure apartment on the top floors. For safety, he'd said, though the word had felt stranger than any danger she'd known. Safety wasn't something she'd trusted in a long time. Now the war was over. Her sister's killer undone, the cover-ups dragged into light. She should have felt only relief, maybe victory. Instead, there was this quiet ache inside, unfinished, uncertain. Tonight, Gabriel had asked her to his private penthouse again. No bodyguards, no board, no storms outside the window. Just city lights glittering across endless dark and the familiar hum of quiet machines. She stepped in cautiously. He was by the wide windows, one hand tucked in his pocket, the other resting, carefully, on the arm where a bullet had once torn through. The view behind him was breathtaking. Glass towers lit like constellations. "You came," he said, turning. "You asked," she answered. For a moment, they just studied each other, the silence strangely gentle after so much chaos. "I have something for you," Gabriel said finally, and crossed to the kitchen counter. She almost laughed when she saw what he carried, 2 porcelain mugs and a gleaming carafe. "Coffee," she said, wary but amused. "Brave," his mouth curved faintly. "I thought we'd start again." She hesitated as he poured, rich, dark liquid steaming in the quiet room. Her first memory of him, cold command across a marble counter, "Drink it," flickered sharp and clear. So much had changed, and yet here they were again, a mug sliding toward her. "No tricks?" she asked softly. "No tricks," he said. Ava looked down at the cup, at the way steam curled like something alive. Then she looked up at him. "You know I could still walk away?" "I know." His gaze didn't flinch. "You have your answers. Justice. Freedom. And if I stay?" His shoulders shifted, a hint of vulnerability beneath the steel. "Then you stay because you choose to. Not because you're trapped." She studied him, the man who'd been monster, then ally, then something she still couldn't name. The man who'd given her danger and truth, and somehow safety, too. Part of her still feared the world he lived in. Part of her knew she'd already stepped too deep to pretend she could go back. "You're not easy to trust," she said. "I wouldn't trust me either," Gabriel replied with a flicker of dry honesty, but his eyes were steady, darker but warmer than she'd ever seen. Slowly, Ava lifted the mug and took a sip. Coffee. Just coffee. A breath she hadn't known she was holding escaped her. She smiled. Small, real, surprising herself. Gabriel's mouth tilted almost imperceptibly, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him. Something eased in the space between them. "So," she said, setting the mug down. "What now?" "Now," he said, leaning on the counter opposite her. "I rebuild. Clean the rot. Hunt the rest of Holt's network. And me? You do whatever you want." His gaze softened just slightly. "But if you want a war to fight, I've got plenty left." She huffed a laugh, shaking her head. "Always recruiting. Always surviving," he corrected. For a long moment, they stood quiet, the city breathing beyond the glass. Ava felt the weight of choice settle in her chest. Heavy, but no longer terrifying. She could walk away, she could take her truth, her sister's justice, and vanish back to a life untouched by billionaires and danger. But when she looked at Gabriel, alive because she'd chosen not to hate him enough to let him die, standing here offering not control but choice, she knew the decision she'd already made. "I think I'll stay," she said. His brows lifted just slightly, as if he'd been ready for any answer but this one. "For now," she added, just to keep him humble. Gabriel's half-smile deepened, quiet and fierce. "For now works." Outside, lightning flickered faint and far away, the last of the storm's ghosts leaving the sky. Inside, two people who'd started as hunter and prey stood on something new. Fragile, maybe dangerous, but alive and theirs to define. Ava picked up her cup again, savoring the warmth, the ordinary piece of coffee shared without poison or lies. For the first time since Ellie's death, the future didn't feel like a locked door. It felt open, and somewhere deep inside, trust, real and terrifying and new, took its first quiet breath.